Hi everyone, welcome for another Holistic Creative Chat. I am very happy today to welcome Suki Capanal. She's an artist and an art coach who really works with facilitating art and art making as a gateway or a path for healing. Thank you for being here, Suki.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! So Suki does all the things that you all know that I love so much too. Creativity and healing and helping people. And you were also just sharing with me how you teach at a school and you work with disabled teens and you also work with elders. And yeah, and I have a feeling that you're doing creative work with them, that is like your function and what you primarily pour into what you do, because that just seems to be what emanates from you. Does that sound right?
Absolutely, yes. I'm a traveling art teacher, as it were.
Love it.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. So the question I like to start with this year is I want you to tell us about a time, whatever comes to mind today, when the connection between creativity and healing was really strong or pivotal for you in your own creative practice.
Oh, there's so many different times that I could think of. Well, the first one that comes to mind, and I'll just do first thought, go with that, was about a year ago, I was facilitating an art class at my son's agency, Upper Valley Services. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with a group of folks with various disabilities and various ages. I think my oldest student is the same age as me. I think she's 61. And there was a young woman in her 20s there who we joke around and call it up syndrome instead of down syndrome. But we're always playing with the names of disabilities to suit our own lives and our own feelings of self-advocacy. But she was very closed off and really not. She used to just sit at the table and watch everyone. She wasn't really participating a lot. And I would sort of put stuff in front of her, and I'd make her a palette, and I'd maybe hand her, a paintbrush or a stamp or like the jelly plate or whatever. And slowly she sort of started coming out of her shell. And then one day she I had about 10 people at the table. So I'm running around facilitating everyone, and we have folks in wheelchairs. We've got folks that are nonverbal and folks that bodies maybe I have to keep handing them stuff, and so I was running around, and I look over, and this young woman had just broke through. It was like boom, and she had her hands in the paint, and she was just painting with her hands all over the canvas, and then she just started laughing, and her soul burst open, and then she just started putting it all over her face. And she was just laughing, and it was just this immediate opening and this healing that I could see happening with her. Mm-hmm. And it just made my heart just, explode in happiness and joy to help this young woman who was really quite closed off emotionally from folks around her, to see her do that. Mm-hmm. And often I drag myself to this class because it's on a Friday morning, and it's Friday morning, Yeah. And no matter what state I arrive in, when I leave, my soul and my heart is full, and I am healed. And just by being with these folks, there's no ego. There's no like, oh, am I doing this right? It's all just complete joy, and I'm really grateful for this.
I love that, Suki. I love that story so much. Something that a lot of people online probably don't know about me is I used to teach ceramics classes to disabled people as well up in Ohio. And it was a pivotal piece in my journey. And so I can relate very deeply to what you're saying. And what I also really love about you, and it just shines through in the way you tell that story and the way you express the gratitude at the end, is that you facilitating art for others is your creative practice, and is a piece of that for you. And in the giving, it becomes the fulfilling. So in the overflow of what you have to offer, it fills you back up. And also, I know so many of us can relate to that. There's that key golden nugget you said in there, that piece of, like, you almost have to drag yourself there sometimes, even though you know that you will probably leave feeling uplifted, and that you do every time, you know. And that's a key piece, I think, also in creative process, how sometimes we just resist. But when we get ourselves into that space and open up to let the process move through us and move through those interactions we're having, it literally just opens us and just expands. Oh, thank you so much for that story.
You're welcome. I mean, I really feel I was speaking to somebody randomly yesterday about this, but meeting people where they are is such an important part of my daily practice. And the teens that I work with are pretty much the ones that have been labeled and thrown away, kicked out of regular school, and they've got some pretty severe emotional disabilities and trauma. Soul loss, from what I can see. There's levels of clinical ways to describe it,
sure.
But in my own practice or my shamanic training, I could see that it's soul loss. And so I often really try to just meet people right where they are and walk into these classes without a lot of expectation. And I might have created a curriculum or I have an idea, but if it has to go out the window, it goes out the window, and I'm just with them, wherever they are. And it's always a miracle. Like, it's hardly ever not a miracle what transpires. And I actually learn as much from my students that I teach. And I mean, I'm thinking of this other woman who, now that I think about it, I think she is older than me. This woman, she can't talk. She just, so that's sort of like her voice is that set of sound. It has a cadence to it. Her painting, she painted a painting a couple of weeks ago. And again, I run around like a crazy person, around this big table. I came back and I was like, that should be in the Whitney. Like, it was that good. Like, she really, really knows how to paint. And I guess they call that outsider art or whatever. But like, man, this woman, she blows my mind. Her body doesn't work really well. It's just she's sort of flailing around while she's painting. But the outcome, the result is like so good. It's just so good. I treasure her paintings. They're really pretty amazing. I'm working on getting a show together so that we can have a big show maybe in the State House here in Vermont. I've done that in the past with my students. But yeah.
Sure.
It's all good.
Yeah, I love that. And that really speaks to just the way the creative expression as a language like bypasses all these other languages we have and these other ways of being in the world, that the soul still has a place to speak through that. And so I want to ask you a question a little bit about your history, because I'm curious, because I believe I remember this from your site, that you have formal training in art. And you did a lot of that kind of academic sort of route for a while, and then you found yourself doing shamanic training. I'm curious, at what point did you always recognize this connection and correlation between art making and the healing processes or soul healing processes?
Well, like it says on my Lilikoi Lanai, my Etsy site, it says I have been doing art since I was very little. I mean, as soon as I could, they slapped stuff in front of me. My mother's a painter. And so I was around paint. And she was always painting. She was very young when she had me. She was 18. And so I was always around paint and canvases and easels and stuff like that. And I always had what I now consider shamanic experiences as a child. I just didn't know that that's what they were. And then on my 50th birthday, I was swimming in the ocean in Kauai. It was my birthday. It was August 19th. And I had, I almost died. I almost drowned in the water in this really beautiful, very spiritual spot called, it's Ke'e Beach, but it's the heiau of Laka. It's a very, very important Hawaiian place. Anyway, I almost died, and there was chanting going on in the water. I came out of the water bloody. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew my life was completely changed. I had no idea that that had been my initiation. Until 2 years later, I lived in a state of confusion and illness for 2 years. I had lumps under my skin that no one could understand what they were, calcium deposits.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't know what was going on. I was still in college. I was finishing up my bachelor's at that point, which I had taken a 25-year break to have children, and I went back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a series of synchronicities and odd connections with people that led me to Hank Wesselman and Jill Kuykendall, who became my shamanic teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And it all happened very magically. Like, none of it made sense. It was completely odd connections. My husband's involved with that. He was part of making those connections. And then it just hit me over the head, like, that my art and my art making and my shamanic practice were actually one and the same.
Yeah.
And then I also coincidentally started working in this private high school that's on an organic farm on top of a mountain in Vermont. And I realized I have a lot of freedom there. I can do what I want, basically. I have my own space, and I'm allowed. My boss is very, he's sympathetic to my way of doing things most of the time. Sometimes I think I drive him crazy because I am pretty independent. Like, somebody said, "Oh, this is Suki's boss," and he went, "Suki doesn't have a boss." It's really funny. But, anyway, he allows me to do like meditative stuff and visualization and drumming and all of these things with my students. And I think it really helps them. And it's given them now the whole school, we do a meditation 3 times. We stop and we're still. And I had implemented that with a Tibetan bell. And now we're doing like Tibetan bells and healing sessions. And, I think the kids are having a different viewpoint on their disabilities. I think it's really important that people see themselves as people first and not their disability first. I think it's really super important. And, they're getting little, like, now they'll come up to me and go, "Hey, Suki, I had this dream last night." And, and they're connecting it with their inner lives, with their outer lives, which I think is what, as artists, we're always trying to do. So I think they're inextricably linked, I guess I would say, in my own life. Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. And so many good things in what you just shared again. I think of, the whole initiation idea is interesting. Some people, like you said, you think as a young child even, your call to art and the way that you moved through that process, as it is unique to you, was something of a sort of shamanic practice or journey that was just intuitive to your nature. And I think, I know I personally can very deeply relate to that, and I know that many of our listeners will be able to as well. And then also how you couldn't have planned the way that things in your life came out and fell into place in order for you to bring this consciousness to it. And yet it wasn't like a deliberate bringing consciousness to it. It was just life bringing the consciousness to you and you going,
I didn't decide, I didn't decide to be a shamanic practitioner. I didn't decide I was going to search out an initiatory experience, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. But in my case, that is not how it happened. And I hated art school. Like, I started out at 16 going to the Art Students League, which is an amazing place in New York City. I went to Parsons School of Design. I almost graduated from the Fashion Institute of Technology. I also went to the New School and all of these places that, are really great places. And I felt like I was being made into an art sausage and squeezed out and left, because it just wasn't serving me and what I needed to learn.
It was probably very similar to, I had a similar experience in art school too. I just never felt like I fit in, nor was there the space for me to express what I was actually experiencing in my own creative process. I didn't fit into the box, and we couldn't have the discussion. There was nobody there to help mentor or guide me through what it was that I was experiencing, which now I see was very much intuitive art making and tapping into something else.
Now that you say that, I remember that what happened then was, years later, decades later, when I went back to school here in Vermont, we have a college here called Goddard College, which back in the day was considered, this very sort of out there place. I mean, I guess it still is. But they have a model where you actually create your own curriculum. And so I was the perfect learner for this type of thing. And so I immediately started studying deeply Frida Kahlo and Georgia O'Keeffe and the possibility that they might have had an affair. I used that as my thesis, I did all of these crazy studies that really served me. And coincidentally, I had this initiatory experience while I was in college. So yeah. I just totally went with it and really went deep into what is happening to me. And then I got college credit for it, which was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And following your own creative curiosity, following your own creative flow is like what opened up that space for those, and then these other events in your life. I feel like that's just what happens. It's when we start to follow the flow and we open up, then the things happen that need to happen for us to
yes,
wake up, is how it's often put, So thank you for sharing that. What a great story. So I have two more questions for you. And the first one is what is lighting up your creative fires right now? Your creative fires. How do you refill? Because you give so much.
Well, how do I refill? That's a good question. My main love in life right now is my stand-up paddleboard. It's
I love that.
Turquoise and hot pink. Its name is Sea Lily. My very first painting that I've ever sold for $1,000, sold to a woman that is my mermaid friend in Maui named Sea Lily. And so I named my supboard after her in honor of being able to purchase it. And I just love being on the water. And when I'm supboarding, I feel like I'm meditating, I'm exercising, I'm shamanic journeying, and I feel in alignment with the entire universe. So that's my main practice right now, is getting on that board. And here in Vermont, we've got large lakes everywhere and stuff, and I'm looking forward to branching out to finding some turquoise water with my supboard. So that's my main thing. I think that I'm very excited about doing some live painting this summer, in a couple of weeks actually, which I've got to get organized. But they're going to make this big, it's almost like a wooden sculpture, and then I'm going to paint on it, and then they're going to set it on fire at night. It's this thing that we're going to have in the quarries here. I live in a town that was and is still one of the major marble and granite producers in the world. We have a huge quarry right across from where I'm sitting. And so we have this big thing. It's to do with, we have bonfires everywhere and music and performers. And so I'm going to be live painting, and then I guess we're going to set it on fire. Talk about setting on fire. Talk about
creative fires, right?
I took you a little bit literally there, but
I love that.
I love live painting. I actually really enjoy it. People do not understand it over here in Vermont. It's still a very new concept. People are like, what? What is
she doing?
I know, really. They dig it, but it's also not, it's not like out in California or the West Coast or whatever, where people, do it everywhere. But anyway, we're starting. But I also really enjoy just sitting on my back lanai, with my lilacois and just painting. My mother is now back in Vermont, and she's an amazing artist who I've never listened to ever, like in my whole life, about anything, and in particular art. And we have started this little salon where she comes over, and I invite a couple of women friends, and she's been teaching us her techniques, and it's blowing my mind.
I love it.
Why did I never listen to my mother? Like, she is an amazing artist, and she really has a lot of incredible tips. So that's what's happening right now for me, is inviting my mom over and having a little bottle of Prosecco and some friends, and just sitting and painting and listening to her and watching her techniques,
I love that, Suki. What I love so much about everything you've shared is how much, this is why I keep playing with this term holistic creative, but how much creative practice and being creative is not just about making art for you. It's about the way you live your life, the way you approach your life.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's the gift and beauty of it. That's like the message underneath, the making art stuff is wonderful and we do it and it's part of it. And it has to expand somehow into the rest of our life when we're really like seeking that holistic way of being. And you really seem to embody that with your life. And I also love that you brought up your mother. My mother is a creative, wonderful artist too, and she's just about getting ready to move here this year. So I'm looking forward to moments like what you're sharing, where we get to spend some more time together and share those creative things. So
make it happen, because I can tell you it's been blowing my mind, and it's been blowing a couple of my girlfriends' mind too, who all think that we think we know what we're doing, and then my mom's 81 and she's got some tricks up her sleeve that. Nice. Plus, she had stopped painting completely. Mm. And she's in a lot of pain physically, but we've got her painting again, and her pain has reduced because she's back doing what she loves. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely. Which leads me into the final question for you. How do you define healing today, Suki?
Whew. That's a big question. I think, again, I'll just sort of let the first thing that comes up, come to mind. I think connecting inward when everything else around you is just either disassembling or is just in confusion or pain or grief. I've had a lot of grief this year, and it's continuing. It's been the motif of this past year. And going inward for nourishment, I really feel anyone can do it. And I have my main student, we're given one student each year, and my main student is very, very unique and has pretty strong autism. Doesn't have a lot of connection outward with folks, and is nonverbal, like my son is nonverbal. And we've started doing sitting practice and doing creative visualization. And I can see the difference that it's making for her. And I know the difference it makes for me. I go down into my Suki cave when I need to heal myself, or if there's something happening for someone else, whether I don't do anything for someone else unless I'm asked. But if there's something happening in the world, like today is World Ocean Day, going down and doing practice for our beautiful Mama Ocean, whatever needs healing, sitting down and getting still and going inward, and if you have them, banging drums or painting, whatever connects you with your inner world, the internets, as it were, is my main modus operandi is, and also sitting with yourself and getting real. Like in my week with Spectrum, I give a couple of different ideas that I've used over the years about getting real with yourself and sitting down and making an assessment. But really, the real trick is going within and going and connecting with your spirit helpers, your ancestors, I call them my cosmic committee. They're people that I honor and care about. I forgot to ask Frida Kahlo to be on it. She stormed in one day and was like, "I'm coming here anyway, whether you've invited me or not," whatever. And going to and asking these folks, like, "Hey, this is the situation right now. I have no idea what to do, and I am hurting and I am in pain. Help me, help me, help me." That's what my teacher Hank says. If you've got a problem, go inward and say, "Help me, help me, help me," and then say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Yes. It's really easy. You don't need a lot of accoutrement or ritual or anything. What you need is an open heart and the intent, and create the space for yourself to ask. Yeah. And there are many, we all have many beings that want to help us and love us and support us and want us to be in the best way that we can be and have our souls grow. So we just need to be present for them, and they will help us. think about healing.
I love that. That's beautiful. And going within and finding what that support looks and feels like, and literally creating relationship with that. I love that so much, Suki. Thank you so much for being here today. And as Suki mentioned, she is a teacher this year for Spectrum 2016. Super excited you're contributing this year for the program. So again, thank you for your time, Suki. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening in.